I am Slick Nick. I am the living legend. I bring this message to you. You probably won't die soon. I think it's important that we talk about this. I don't think it's morbid. I don't think it's creepy. I think it's important. I think it's important, especially knowing that most of my viewers are younger men, maybe half my age, especially when you're 20 years old. It's the default that you think nothing bad's going to happen to me. I'm not going to die young. And the reality is, even though it is quite likely that you'll die young, most of you will not. Most of you will continue to survive and continue to live. And I think that's interesting to consider, because it's important that we imagine, that we realize we're all going to die at one point. One of my favorite comedians, Louis C.K., talks about how that when you consider all of the people who have ever lived on Earth, most of them are dead. We're the minority. We're the living minority that are still here. Most of everybody has already lived and died. And so will we. We just don't know when. And we have this tendency not to think about it often. And I always say it requires a lot of faith. Death. To be alive, knowing that death is coming our way at some point, that requires faith. For me, I am a man of faith, of the Christian faith. I believe that Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. Other people don't believe that. Other people have no religion. They have no faith. But ultimately, they still have a default faith that their lack of belief that there's just a blackout at the end of your life and that nothing happens, that you don't have an internal consciousness that lives on, that faces judgment, anything like that. It still requires some sort of faith that they're right, that there's nothing at the end of this life when they pass away. And then others have their own faith. Ultimately, though, as a living human being, at some point in your life, you have to decide, what do I believe happens? There is some sort of, even if it's a little bit of faith, it's faith that maybe what I believe is not going to be your reality. It is a matter of coming to terms with that in some ways. I find it interesting also when we're talking about the fact that we're all going to die, but probably not soon. I think about how much, I've talked about this before, but when we talk about the economy, especially the American economy, it's faith. What makes a dollar worth a dollar? The fact that you believe it is a dollar and it's worth a dollar, and the fact that I continue to believe it's a dollar in the same way that we believe $20 bill, even though we don't really use cash anymore. Okay, $20 is $20. We believe it's $20 because in our minds we give it that value. It's imaginary. Money is imaginary. It's faith. And we can see the same concept with the fact that we all have a general faith system that we're not going to die. We know we will eventually, but we all believe ultimately that we all, even if we've got lots of questions about our own life and what life's all about and what we're going to be doing for the next year, whatever's going on, we ultimately have enough faith that we don't think that we're going to die ourselves anytime soon and that each other are not going to die anytime soon. I want to give you an example. So my wife and I, a couple years ago, when we got life insurance, and it's a morbid thought. It's almost like a black comedy, a dark comedy. This concept that if either of us dies, whether I die or my wife dies, the other person gets a paid off house. And it's weird. I mean, to think of, knowing what our house is worth, a certain fraction of $1 million. And if one of the other person dies, the other person has enough money to more than cover this house, which we've already made something like $100,000 off based off the 4 years ago when we bought it, and the value's risen. So the survivor in that case would ultimately have a lot of money and kind of be set for life. But the insurance company is assuming that, being married nearly 11 years, that my wife and I care enough about each other that we are going to do everything in our independent lives not to die. And we would choose each other over the concept of dying. We want to keep this thing going. We want to keep this marriage going, this life going, and that ultimately and our drive to work every day, that we're going to be paying enough attention as we're driving that we don't get in a car accident, that we're going to take care of our bodies enough to where we do our best to prevent the diseases that we can and prevent cancers in the best way we can. We're taking care of ourselves. We're healthy people. We eat very well. We exercise regularly. We're doing what we can. We're doing our part to survive. And I'm truly fascinated just by the fact that worldwide that most of us continue to live. We just keep living. We continue to make decisions that prevent our deaths. Even though we know we're going to die, we're still doing everything we can to keep that further away from us and assume that we won't be the ones that die young. And the reality is most of us will not be dying anytime soon. But the whole economy, our whole existence, there's this unspoken rule of faith that we're all assuming that, well, hey, you know what? Life isn't perfect. Life can be dark and complicated at times, and life is full of mysteries, but I still wouldn't want to die anytime soon. I wouldn't want to live recklessly in a way that would bring my death any sooner. So ultimately, we just keep living. And like I said, we still have to have that a little bit of faith somewhere in there that whatever happens when we die, that we're going to be okay with. You, as a non-Christian, have to assume that I'm wrong enough to believe that we don't answer to God for our lives, that there's no reason to believe that Jesus died for the sins of mankind, that we were all born sinners and deserve eternal death, therefore, and that Jesus is the only solution to the fact that we've been born with a sinful nature. If everything I just said just in that moment was garbage to you, you still have enough faith to believe that what Nick Show believes is garbage. You have enough faith to go to your grave believing that what I just said is a lie, is an illusion. And meanwhile, I'll be going to my grave believing what I just said. And there's no way for me to prove you wrong. There's no way until we're all dead to know for sure. And even then, if the people who are agnostics or atheists or who believe that it just all ends once we die, even then, for them, there's no way for them to prove me wrong because consciousness ceased to exist according to what they generally believe. Because there is no common form of belief other than, I guess, you cease to exist. There's so much faith, by default, faith that exists in this concept of knowing that we're all going to die, but we're not going to die soon. And none of us want to die soon. We all want to live our lives. Now, I get it if we're very old and live most of our lives and maybe there's not as much to live for. That's different if you're sitting in a nursing home. But I'm pretty sure there's not a lot of people sitting in nursing homes watching this video. I think most of you are younger than me as you're watching this video thinking about these things. We take it for granted that we're not going to die anytime soon. And we continue to live our lives and plan out our lives accordingly to the fact that we're probably not going to die soon. And again, even the insurance companies are putting their money on the fact that people aren't going to be dying soon, especially people like my wife and I. Even if we're halfway through life, we're middle-aged. It's funny when you hear middle-aged, you think of this guy who's in his mid-50s. No, middle-aged is, people in their late 30s. We're actually middle-aged. Insurance companies put their faith in knowing that we are not self-destructive. We have our doubts about life. We have our doubts about all of this, but we're ultimately not interested in reckless behavior that's going to speed up that inevitable day in which we all die. I think that's fascinating that we all have to come to terms with this to some degree. And maybe you haven't, because you are 20 years old, that magical age where you think you're invincible, but you're probably also most prone to a fatal accident of some kind. But even if nothing else, you've watched a 10-minute video where I've talked about it. And might I even add to, I'll even say, I know that there's no way that YouTube will allow me to make money off of this video because I'm talking about death. Anytime I talk about death, they automatically restrict me from making money because they're like, well, what companies would sponsor a morbid topic like that. But what's funny is I don't find this morbid at all. I think this is a very much an alive and woke concept. Even if I can't get sponsors to make money from this video, maybe it shows you that even though I do care a lot about money, money isn't everything. And every once in a while, I'll throw you a freebie. I'll still spend 10 minutes to make a video that I still won't be sponsored for. So there you go. We've learned a lot, haven't we? We've had some deep thoughts. Let's continue the deep thoughts. Where? Right here in the comment section.